Hello everyone. Today we're gonna make an update video for Jaywalk, and I've added a few features since the last time we talked. So today I'm just gonna play the game and show y'all what the game looks like today. Also, my game is going to be on Steam Next Fest, which starts today at 10 a.m. and it won't end until the 22nd. So if y'all could please go and play my game for just a little while, it will help my algorithm and hopefully more people will discover the game. With that being said, let's go over the new changes. One of the biggest problems my game had was that when people were jumping around the world and they crossed a train track and the train came by, the train would end up blocking the player's view and they wouldn't be able to see their character in the world, making it impossible for them to know where their character is exactly in the world. And it kind of felt unfair for the player because how are they supposed to maneuver the world when they don't even know where they're at? So my solution was to add a invisible collision box that will detect whenever there's a train behind the player, and if there is a train behind the player, it will tell the train to go invisible so the player's visibility wasn't blocked. So my demo has actually been live now for at least a month, and after I added this change, I realized it worked pretty good. So I realized that if I was making the train go invisible so the player can always see their character in the world, why am I not making this happen for all the other obstacles in the world that block the player's view? So then I also had to build my obstacles to have a function that makes them go invisible when they're blocking the player's view. But not only that, I also made it to where if they come close to the obstacle will go invisible. And this is so the player can see if there's a car coming from that side and they know whether it's safe to cross or not. I just didn't want anybody to die from getting hit by a car just because there was a tree in the way and they couldn't see that the car was coming. Now, I get that that is kind of like what happens to jaywalkers is sometimes, you know, they're crossing the road when they're not supposed to. And if they don't see a car coming, they can get hit. But in the video game world, it's always satisfying for the player to have a fair chance to see if a car is coming so they can time their jumps correctly. Another big problem I had with people who were playing the game for the first time was that whenever they got to the water portion of the map, they didn't know that it was water. So most of the time they would just jump into the water on purpose, not knowing that it's water. So basically I went in and added a sign that hints to the fact that that is water, and hopefully we won't have as much people jumping into the water on their first play test. Now, the way Jaywalk works is as you move forward, modules of platforms start spawning in front of you, and sometimes if 10 pieces of water spawn in back to back, all of those would have a water warning sign. But that wouldn't make sense. Why would there be a warning sign of water inside the water? Like, you're already in the water. Why would you need a warning sign when you're already in the water? So I made a function that checked if the previous tile was a water tile, and if it was, it would destroy the signs. So there's only one water warning sign where the water begins. Now, creating these water signs kind of made me think about how the water just had logs and lily pads and stuff that you can jump on the water, but none of it moved. There was no current to the water. Everything that was on the water that you could step on just didn't move at all. So it kind of just made the world feel like a little dead, like it's just a static world. And I realized that I really did need to add like moving items on the water. So I built a new version of the water that actually has moving logs, and that was a little bit of a nightmare to make because the player is jumping on a 400 by 400 grid. So every time they move left or right or up or down, they're moving 400 units every single time. But if they jump on a log and they jump back off the log and they're not exactly on a 400 unit increment, they're now officially unaligned with the whole entire world. world. So I had to find a way to make it so that the player would automatically gravitate towards the closest 400 by 400 increment so that they would never unsynchronize with the world grid. This was a little bit of a headache because I also realized that if you move left or right on the log while it's moving, the player would look like he's jumping a further distance if he's jumping towards the opposite direction of the log. But if he jumps towards the same direction of the log, he would look like he's jumping half the distance. So then I had to make some logic that would check if the player's standing on a log, and if he is standing on a log, he needs to check the velocity of the log and the direction. Then add or subtract the player's movement so it looks like they're still moving at a consistent 400 by 400 units when they're moving left or right on the log. Now this part was really annoying. Like, oh my goodness, I was originally trying to make something so the player could detect specific areas where they can jump on the log, but I kind of just figured it would be easier to let the player jump wherever they want when they're jumping from log to log, but whenever they're jumping back onto a tile, they would automatically be pulled back towards the closest grid unit in the world. So this kind of makes the game feel a little better when you're jumping off the logs, because whenever you jump off the log, your player will automatically gravitate towards the closest grid. All right, well, that's enough talking about the logs. Let's talk about the roads. As you can see, the roads also have signs now. I basically took the same logic that I built for the water and reapplied it for the roads. So whenever there's a road that's starting, there's signs in front of it, but there isn't signs on every single road. It's just wherever the road starts. After I finished building that, I added an option that would allow the player to change their point of view at any moment whenever they'd like. And I did this because I realized that sometimes the player would try to move forward in the world, but instead of pressing the forward button, they would press the move left button. So they were clearly getting confused on what was considered moving towards the left and what was moving forward. So I gave the player options to change their point of view so that if they were getting confused with what's considered moving forward or left, they had a simplified view that made it easier for them to understand what button to press. One of my playtesters mentioned that they didn't like that the further they survived didn't mean that they earned more points. And what they mean is that in the game there's a currency that you use to unlock characters, and you gain this currency by picking up items in the world. And he didn't like that surviving longer didn't mean gaining more points, which I totally agree with him. I think the player should be rewarded for surviving longer. So I made the pickup items change depending on how far you make it. On the first 100 tiles the player's on, if they pick up an item, they only gain 1 point. But on the next 100 tiles that they survive, they gain 2 points every time they pick up an item. So basically, every time you survive 100 tiles, the amount of points that a pickup item gives you is incremented by 1. So if you make it to level 600 and you grab a pickup item, it'll give you an entire 6 points. So it's definitely a whole lot more rewarding to make it further, because if you're making it further, you'll unlock characters a whole lot quicker than the people who aren't making it that far. And I even went so far to add in an area where if you make it so far ahead, you would get an entire 100 tiles of just forest. So that means there would be no risk to walking past those 100 tiles, and you would have pickup items spawning at the same time. So it would be a little reward for the players who make it that far. Now, I don't remember exactly how far you have to make it, but I think it was 1300. If the player makes it to level 1300, they will literally just get free pickup items before being thrown back onto the roads and rivers. Going back to the water logs, I realized I forgot to mention something, which is what happens if the player just rides a log. Well, let me just show you. Yep, that's a big alligator. and it just ate the player. I also worked on the multiplayer side of the game. I realized the multiplayer was really laggy and players' animations for the client were not playing entirely correctly. Like they were like jittering a lot and it was just really bad. So I changed the logic for how the online was working, and after I did that, it feels a whole lot smoother and a whole lot better. So even though nothing visually changed, if you go play the online multiplayer, you'll probably enjoy it more than the version I had previously. Also, if you take a whole look at the entire UI, all the assets were redone. So now the buttons look different, and I added a font to all the text, so those look different now. And the player's button hints on screen during gameplay also changed. I also went and changed the music to the game. I felt like it was maybe a little too much, and I changed it to something more chill. But maps with specific themes, like the Valentine's map will have Valentine songs, and the Christmas map will have Christmas songs, and so on. But I'd be interested to hear y'all's opinion on the new main menu music, and I want to know if y'all like the old music better or the new music better. Here's a quick snippet of what the old main menu music used to sound like.
Stepping stone. I'm the winner of Jaywalk, crown made out of crosswalk stripes, dodging all the rules you're talking, still landing on my feet each time, gold medal for not stop.
And here is the new main menu music. Honestly, I kind of like the old music better, but I did have some people mention that maybe the music was a little too much. So I am going to try the new music. And if enough people comment on this video that they like the previous version better, then I'll revert it back to the previous version. Now we will finally go over the last few changes that the game has gone through since the last update, which is loading screens. My game has loading screens now. So the player usually used to load up the entire game, and they would kind of see things start spawning in when they're opening the game for the first time. And there was no loading screen to look at while this happened. So the game looked like it was crashing or something. So I ended up adding a loading screen that shows you a video when you first open the game up, and then whenever you're opening a new level and your computer is having to load the new level up, there will be a loading screen with a random image that has hints about the game. This was a little nice addition to the game because now it feels more complete. Another thing I forgot to mention was that if you go to the credits, you will see that there's two new buttons. One of them is a link to the YouTube channel, and another is an invite to a Discord channel. If you click on the YouTube button, it will automatically open a link to my YouTube channel. But if you click on the Discord button, it will automatically open a Discord invite to my server. You can join my server to report some bugs or give suggestions for map themes you would like to see in the game. This game will now support leaderboards, so every time you die, you're going to be uploading your score, and it'll show you whenever you die the leaderboard. So whatever new high score you set, you'll be able to see it stacked up against the whole world and just your friends. I also added a Tickfinity feature to the game. Tickfinity is a way for streamers to stream the game and allow their viewers to interact with the game. Whenever a viewer donates to the streamer, they will be able to sabotage the streamer's run. Depending on what type of donation they send, they will be able to put the streamer in jail, send a missile after him, spawn death drops over the player, make the player move forward, left, right, causing the streamer to maybe jump in front of a car, or just make them die instantly. And that's been officially everything that has changed in the game since the last update. So I encourage all of y'all to go and play the game today or within the next 7 days. Also, I know some of y'all are watching me because y'all are thinking about going to Full Sail University and maybe you have questions about it. So if you want to just join the server just to ask me questions about it, I'll reply to your messages on the server. Anyway, that'll be all for today. So bye-bye.
Good morning! Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.